What's going on, Disney fans? It's Disney Dan here with another episode of DIStory, a Disney history lesson. If you're new to our DIStory series or Disney Dan in general, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and for those of you already subscribed, thanks so much. We seriously love all the fans who support us. Thanks for watching and leaving comments to say hello. For our 13th episode of DIStory, we're going to dive deep, really deep, like belly of a whale deep, to bring you the costumed evolution of everyone's favorite real boy, Pinocchio. Entering the Disney family thanks to the featured animated film that premiered in 1940, Pinocchio wasn't an initial box office smash, being one of the first major financial losses for the animation studio. Unlike Snow White, the previous box office hit for Disney, Pinocchio's release faced huge challenges that prevented it from being a worldwide box office hit, including World War II, that would heavily impact most of the European distribution, ultimately hurting the early numbers for the film. Eventually, though, after many re-releases, the animated classic would go on to be a huge success and a fan favorite for decades to come. It was actually at the premiere in 1940 that we saw our first version of the Pinocchio costumed character, where Walt Disney hired 11 little people to portray the wooden puppet turned real boy at the all-day premiere event. The little people entertained guests from the roof of the theater by waving and dancing for those attending the big event's red carpet. Each wore a simple Pinocchio mask, but it's difficult to tell what quality they are. Not a ton of great photos exist from the event, but it looks like they all had similar outfits, including matching shirts and vests. This is actually an absolutely amazing story that involves the 11 little people playing Pinocchio, and some intoxication and the removal of a lot of clothing, and it's kind of absolutely fabulous. So if you want to hear that story, let me know, because it kind of deserves its own video, so leave a comment below. From the red carpet to the ice rink, the first full-bodied costume character of Pinocchio appeared in the Disney featured segments of the 1950s Ice Capades. In a big partnership with the Disney company, the Ice Capades were the first to present costume characters to America in their large touring shows. Pinocchio, being one of the original cast, had his own featured segment with Geppetto in the toy workshop. The costume was a slight variant from the original animated design. The red pants, white shirt, vests, dark parted hair, etc. were all there. The two big parts that were missing were the yellow hat and big blue bow. And while the outfit looked like it had short sleeves and shorts, it actually had painted arms and leg sleeves underneath the costume to make it look like wooden parts, because he was a wooden puppet. His large, hard, foam-sculpted head had bright blue eyes, weirdly rounded cheeks, and sort of an odd, opened mouth smile. The costume even featured a fun gag that would allow the nose to slightly grow. Eventually, Pinocchio would get a minor makeover for the Ice Capades, including a new head sculpt with a separate jaw piece to give that marionette look, a large yellow hat, and that signature blue bow with the big white collar. This new look is what ultimately carried over to the opening day of Disneyland in 1955, where Walt himself at the last minute tapped into the Ice Capades' talent and costumes to fill the park with characters. This costume was more or less the same one used for the Ice Capades, with the exception of the undershirt and pants, which I theorized were a one piece that was all tied together, including the wooden shoe covers for the skates. But it's clear they fixed something up for him last minute, and there was one for the parade for all to see. The absolute strangest and equally rarest version of Pinocchio came in 1961 as Disneyland revamped their walk-around characters during their Fun in 61 campaign. This big head version of Pinocchio was used for such a short amount of time that barely any photos of it exist. In fact, we can only find one photo of him pulled from a historical Disney park book. This version of Pinocchio was unique in two ways. First, it was the only big head costume that didn't need a hat or similar gimmick built into it to give the cast member inside room to see, thanks to Pinocchio's already large hairline and forehead. Second, this is the only Pinocchio costume to be accompanied by a tiny Jiminy Cricket that sat upon Pinocchio's giant head. These big head costumes didn't last long in the park due to a variety of complaints, including guests being dissatisfied with the characters couldn't hug or interact with their kids, and this Pinocchio, being the most short-lived of all of the big-headed characters, was rarely seen. After a short run of big heads, Pinocchio went back to a more traditional costume in 1962. There are a lot of similarities between this Pinocchio and the one from the Ice Capades, but the biggest difference was the use of silicone rubber, giving the new head sculpt a much cleaner and more polished look. This new head sculpt was used for close to 15 years and had a variety of paint jobs through the years, including varying degrees of rosy cheeks, eye color, and strangely, nose color. Not sure why Pinocchio's nose had to keep changing colors over the years. From here on out, Pinocchio's costumed outfit more or less stays the same, as the original cartoon character design was so incredibly simple. There isn't much you can really change or upgrade about a simple yellow shirt, vest, red pants, and wooden shoes. When Disney on Parade took to the road in the early 70s, Pinocchio was one of the original core cast, dancing and entertaining guests in the large crowd numbers. Initially, the costume used was the same one seen in the parks, but in 1973, Pinocchio got a featured segment in the show, which meant he also got a nice new head sculpt. The new head featured minor tweaks to things like the eyes and ears, but added two big, cool new features. First, Pinocchio now had a separate jaw, much like the opening day version back in 1955, but this one was much smaller and refined, giving a nice residual bouncing motion as he performed. Second, and one of the coolest things done with this costume, he had the ability to grow giant donkey ears on stage, just like the transformation we see in the film. This version was only used for a few years for the Disney on Parade show and never made it into the parks, unfortunately. In the late 70s, Pinocchio got a brand new look, much like most of the other characters in the park, in preparation for Mickey's big 50th birthday celebration. The new head sculpt for the character gave him a nice swooping hairstyle, a thicker nose, and more rounded human features in the face. This was the first design to downplay the large forehead of the character with the changed hairstyle. This is also around the time Disney transitioned most of its characters from a 5-finger human glove to a more character-friendly 4-fingered glove. The changes in the skin tone, hairstyle, and missing wooden accents makes this the first version of Pinocchio to present him as a real boy compared to previous versions that highlight him in his puppet form. In the late 80s, Disney on Ice began transitioning any humanoid character from a big-headed mascot to a live face performer with minor prosthetics or makeup. Of course, Pinocchio was one of the first to get this treatment, and it was used to the advantage of the story, allowing Pinocchio to transform into a real boy at the end of his segment by removing simple parts of his costume like the large fake extendable nose. This was actually pretty clever in terms of storytelling. Today's modern Pinocchio appeared first in 1998 and continues to be used to this day. The new version upgraded the previous 80s head sculpt with a new hairline, bringing back the giant forehead, and gave Pinocchio an overall more computer kind of animated Pixar look with very round features including his jaw and cheeks. The final costume upgrade had minor tweaks, including the addition of a few buttons on the pants and shoes. A lighter color scheme was used for things like the blue accents found around the costume, and more rosy cheeks were given to him, and a little bit of a more rosy nose. The modern look clearly tried to make this character the most animated and cartoon come to life than any previous version. So what do you think? There you have it, a look back at the interesting evolution of one of Disney's most iconic characters. What I find most interesting about this evolution is that it sort of follows the character's story arc, including starting off as a wooden boy costume, eventually transforming into a donkey costume, and then finally being presented as a real boy. Kind of interesting, isn't it?
What they can't do these days.
Let us know what version of Pinocchio is your favorite in the comments below. As always, a special thanks goes out to the amazing Papipi Pets blog for his help with research and timelines. Make sure you check out the description below for some other great sites and helpful people that make these videos possible. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already for more great DIStory content. It would really help us grow, and I'd really appreciate it. Plus, check out some of our other fun videos, including our new DIStory mini-series. And don't forget to visit us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to say hello. You can find those links in the description below. And as always, I always say as always, you guys rock. Thanks for watching.